Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Creative Leadership Podcast brought to you by Blue Sky Republic. My name is Arne van Oostrom and I'm okay. How are you? You good? Where are you? Are you in your office? Are you in your car? Are you okay? I'm working from home a lot still. I've done some sessions, some training programs in person, which is awesome. I really miss being part of a group of people, being in the same room. The energy is different. The human connection obviously is different. I really miss that. But at the same time, I'm kind of an introvert, to be honest. You might not be able to tell because I can talk a lot and I do kind of come across as someone who could be an extrovert sometimes, but I really am not. No, I'm an introvert. Anyway, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay with working from home. I really enjoy that, and I like doing this podcast because it allows me to talk to people and ask them all kinds of amazing questions that otherwise I would not have dared to ask them, which is cool. So I'm fine. I hope you are fine. I don't know how the pandemic is going for you right now. Here in my country, the Netherlands, we kind of said, well, let's not have that anymore. It's gonna get, we're kind of fed up with it, and we were like, well, yeah, not in the mood for a pandemic right now. So we kind of said, well, let's just not have it. There you go. Problem solved, folks. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, today on the show, I am pleased to have Morgan Duta as my guest. Morgan is part of Blue Sky Republic. I've met her when she was doing a course on Imagineering, and I was running an experiment with her cohort. This is basically how we got to know her. So we have some connections, but there's something else that I'm very excited about, is that she's going to be a co-host of this show. And it really excites me because I think this podcast needs an extra voice. And she's going to be that voice, and she has a great voice. So enjoy my conversation with Morgan. There you go.
Recently, a friend described me as an artist, and I was really surprised. I was like, I'm not an artist. I don't have a special medium that I use, like photography or sculpture. But then I thought about it, and I think that I maybe am an artist. And so I'm kind of embracing that for myself more often. But I'm a thinker, I'm a creative, I'm a artist, apparently. Um, I'm a designer. Of course, then you can move into the professional things. And I've always, yeah, I think I wear a lot of different hats, but I also have always been a bit like this and still trying to figure out how it all works together.
That's interesting. So I like, so yeah, I'm curious about the artist part because it resonates with me. Why? So why would that friend say you're an artist?
That's a good question. Also, I think so. My friend is very observant and also good at reading people. And so I think was able to perceive something in me that I wasn't yet able to. But then I think when I started diving into the differences between artists and designers, as one does when they're thinking, does this label pertain to myself? I really started to notice that artists also tend to draw a lot from personal experience, as well as like the emotional side of things as well. And then also this concept of incorporating everything. So even their trip to the grocery store may influence their art somehow. And that's also then everything in my life, everything is connected to everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And
but designers do that, don't they?
This is true. This is true. Yeah.
So what's the difference between an artist and a designer?
There's scientific articles that break this down, which is boring to discuss.
Yes. Okay, yeah. Can you read one out loud? That would be
I
nice.
can send you
No,
one.
no, yeah, no, please don't. No, no, yes.
But
No,
but
seriously, what's the
one of the
difference?
things is that designers are problem solvers and that artists are problem creators.
I like that one. That's nice.
And
Yeah.
I think this is I think I'm both then an artist and a designer.
All right. So you create problems and then you solve them.
Solve them.
That's a good business model.
I
That's
think
great.
it's very sustainable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, designers in a way, they create problems because they might. I mean, if we talk about designers in the broadest sense, you basically if you're a good designer, you have to also often, at least in my experience, you go into the place where it hurts because you have to because you go like, this is the problem that needs solving. I think when I started, so I worked at a design agency with designers, and I was creative director, and we would kind of design stuff which was very superficial in a way. But I moved into design thinking because I felt that I could be more of use when I would be part of the discovering of the problem. Right. Yeah. So basically, so before you solve the problem, you want to solve the right problem. So not just maybe it's not causing the problem, but anyway, but you servicing the problem. You are kind of saying, hey, this is where it hurts because of, and that's not a typical skill for designers, but it's a skill for people who are kind of inclined to be creatives or connectors or people with a different way of thinking, outsiders maybe even, and artists. It's interesting. I think there's a similarity there. I'm not sure if it makes any sense to say what's the difference. I think there's a skill there for creative people.
Yes,
it's there, and you, if you use sort of, you go through if you're an artist, you maybe take a different path in sort of showing that or making that manifest. That's different than when you're a designer, because for a designer you work for other people, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah, and I think there's a large overlap, and I especially think that good artists also have a lot of designer skill sets, and that good designers also have a lot of artistic skill sets. So I think there's a really large overlap.
Yeah, but it's interesting. That's why. So it's. I mean, we shouldn't kind of talk too much about this. I think, but I could talk about this forever, because to me that is sort of where also me personally is where I'm always struggling, because I think I'm an artist. I want to be. I always say when I grow up, I'm going to be an artist. I come from a family of artists. I think I should be an artist.
You are an artist. You should say it. I am an artist.
Yeah, I do to myself in the mirror.
You are.
I am an artist. Yes.
That's brilliant.
I am. I feel like that. But there is so I don't know if that's something you also feel, because maybe I sense that a little bit when your friend said, you're an artist, you go like, no, I can't be. That's like, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, because
I think I am, but you can't say that out loud. You can't, because there's a bit of like, I think I am. I would like to be, but can I claim that? Can I be that?
Yes. So this is a super interesting story. I was at a photography gallery opening, like really high end in Amsterdam, and was meeting some of the people there. And a friend of mine works at the gallery, so I was just there to hang out with her, right? Not to buy the paintings that cost, or the photographs that cost more than my more than my salary. But was talking to somebody, and he had a camera. So I asked him, I said, "Oh, are you a photographer?" Or, and he goes, "No, and this guy was in his mid-60s. He goes, "No, I decided I enjoy photography, so I should start carrying my camera around more so that I'm always ready whenever a moment presents itself." And then we get to chatting, and he shows me some of his work. And this man had incredible work. He had been an illustrator, an ad director, had done a lot of really incredible professional products. I said, so you're an artist." He said, No. I'm just an illustrator who enjoys photography. I said, "But no, you're an artist." And the photographs he was showing me could have been magazine quality. really impressive. I said, but no, you're an artist. And he also had the same self struggle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this was like a very, successful man in his 60s, and also
Yeah.
struggled with this idea of calling himself an artist, which
Yeah,
is,
because it's such a special thing to call yourself an artist, as if it's you have to earn art. If the art world calls you an artist, then you might be an artist, which is nonsense, obviously.
yeah,
I think my kids are artists, especially
yeah,
when before they're teenagers, and then they go like, no, I can't be an artist, which also is kind of somewhat connected to it, that being an artist. But so maybe you could say an artist is someone who works purely for kind of sort of him or herself. Like it's my inner life, and it's a comment on sort of what's happening in the wider world, or it's something inside of me, but it's introspective, and it's not meant for other people. It's just for me. And then other people say, wow, that's so awesome. But it's not commercial in the sense that they would. But then there's Andy Warhol, for instance, and you're like, is he a designer or is he an artist? I don't really know. I think
very clever. Yeah.
we can have a debate about that, right? And it's in the perception of other people, I think this is where it happens, where you go like, that's art and that's design, and that is whatever. So I say, if you feel that you're an artist, you're an artist. But it does give you sort of a lens to look at what you do in a different way. So I don't say this out loud very often, and now it's also recorded, because I feel that it's almost like you're saying that you are so great and it's so much better than other people because you are an artist. I don't just create a business. No, I am an artist. So it kind of sounds a bit like that. Like, who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Like, no, it's art. It's like, and because
maybe we need like a tag, like a tagline, like an artist asterisk, absolutely dreadful, just doing for the hell of it, artist.
Yeah, but I mean, artists are people who struggle, and I do paint a lot, by the way. I come from a female family artist. My mother, my grandfather was quite a famous artist in the Netherlands. I paint a lot. I do a lot of photography. The worst thing for me is painting, because it's horrible, because it's such a psychological weird thing to do. I become this zombie if I do so, because it's painful. I know a lot of artists not everyone, but most artists find it very painful as a process, because you're so vulnerable, and it's so and you do something, and even your inner critic has to kind of, you have to shut it down. It takes a long time, and then the other people come and say, is it like upside down like this, or and they go like, I don't want to show this to people. But it sounds arrogant. It sounds arrogant because it has this stigma, and if you say it's an artist. But I seriously feel that the artist in me allows me to be free and explore and experiment. And when I created Design Thinkers group, to me, and again, I don't ever say this out loud, because I feel it sounds like a weird thing to say and almost arrogant. But to me, it was I was making art. I was coloring in things. I was like, let's try this and let's do that and do. I wasn't thinking about it in a linear, structured way, or in a process way, or at all. It was exactly, if I paint, I do exactly the same. I do the same thing. It's not a different attitude. It's not a different attitude towards doing things. Anyway. So I'm no, this is not.
But it also kind of lends
me, but I'm like that.
But it also lends itself to this emergence process that comes up so much in everything, right?
Exactly.
If you sit down to paint something, to write something, to photograph something, and you have an idea, this is what I want to convey or capture. Yeah. And there's always going to be something that influences that process. And I think that's kind of some of the magic that you can allow that comes into play with art, because your cat walks across a painting and all of a sudden you have something that you didn't expect, something that you weren't
Yeah,
anticipating. And so
exactly.
I think design, and especially mm, as I watch some of the design processes happening, you can see how sometimes all of that magic just gets thought out through the rational mindset. So I
Yeah,
think the most
exactly.
impactful design for me is when you can allow that magic to also exist as well.
I like that. That's a good point. Yeah. So it is because, yeah, and again, I mean, generalizing artists because there's, a diverse group of people, obviously.
Yeah.
But having sort of this, yeah, but seeing things emerge
Mhm.
while working on something, while trying things and exploring new ways of doing things or new ways of expressing yourself. That is that to me is what I call art, and so that is an artistic way of kind of looking at things, but it's I think it's almost unhealthy to try to kind of distinguish art from design or design from art. Obviously there is something there because you have
Mhm.
to apply, so it's almost like applied art. It's like, I use my artistry, my being the artist. I come into a company, and companies have done that, right? So they've asked artists to kind of come in and look at what they, and just
Yeah.
comment on their business because they have a completely different look, point of view, and totally different reality. So yeah. Anyway, so so you're an artist. All right, we've established that. So it took a long time. Sorry. So it's such, I feel that such a, I think it is important, and
Yeah.
also, so connecting that, so I just mentioned to you
Mhm.
about my kids. So like when they were young, they're all artists, and then they get kind of school educated out of it.
Yeah.
So how about you? Where did you go to school, and how was you, what kind of kid were you?
Yeah. A great question. Um, so I've been to school in many places.
Okay.
And I think um I guess this is grew up going to public school, and then I was um socially awkward, I think is the phrase we use.
Why? What does that mean?
Like I didn't know how to get along with the other kids. I was always reading books. I was super smart. I would finish these, like the teacher would hand out a worksheet. I would finish it in 5 minutes and it would take the class 20 minutes. So I would be sitting there bored, causing trouble for all the other kids. Really just kind of became this what
Ah,
do you do with Morgan style situation. um but I was so curious about everything. Was constantly reading books, would every week come home with a whole new tote bag full of books to read. I really enjoyed being outside. My dad also had a workshop, and so we were constantly building things, and
ah.
trying things in the workshop. So really, um, now looking back, I mean, of course, when I go to introduce myself, it's I'm also trying to figure out who I am, right? And looking back, I can kind of see how these pieces are starting to fall together. Um, because then when it came to school, so then I was homeschooled for 4 years, which was really,
Hmm.
really interesting. Decided to go back to high school to play sports. So I played sports and then did the whole university path. I'm from the United States, so a bit, you go to high school and then you do university and have this traditional university experience. But I ended up jumping around. So I first started studying journalism, but when I would be at the library to study, the drinking fountain was near the design books. So every time I'd go to fill up my water bottle, I would be distracted by these design books. And I was like, okay, I don't think journalism, I enjoy writing,
Hmm.
but I'm also really intrigued. And so I talked to a career counselor and I said, I want to design products because in my mind, industrial design was, I didn't know that that was a thing. And I just thought that there could be interior designers, graphic designers, or fashion designers. There was no design world bigger than that for me. So I went to a career counselor and she said, oh, you want to design products? So I think you should double major in art and engineering.
Mm.
And I said, this sounds terrible. Like, these are two of the most difficult degrees someone could possibly earn. And to double major in both of them really does not sound like my thing. So she says, well, go talk to the interior design teacher. Maybe he has an idea. So I walk in, I explain, and he looks at me like I'm an idiot. He's like, you mean industrial design? I'm like, what's industrial design? He's like, go home and Google it. Like, really dismissive.
Really?
So of course I go home and Google it, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. So then I studied industrial design, and actually got sick for a few years, and so then had to drop out of my studies.
For a few years.
Yeah. And I didn't realize I was sick at the time. So then this super interesting, so I actually had a sleep disorder. So my body didn't make enough of the chemical to say that I was awake. So I was just constantly exhausted. So I could sleep for 18 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah.
And
so
but your body didn't recognize that.
It was kind of like a gradual descent into this exhaustion. And I just thought everyone was this exhausted, and somehow I wasn't able to cope. And so then you try to push yourself, and, and then of course you start failing all your classes because you're sleeping through all your classes.
Yeah.
Naturally. So then it finally got to the point where realized something bigger was going on, took some time off to deal with that. Then at that point was feeling kind of like the social pressure that maybe design isn't the thing for me, and maybe I should do engineering. So then I studied engineering and was just still also unhappy. So it took me 10 years to get my bachelor degree in the end. And for somebody who was so praised as smart and quick growing up their whole life, that was really a personal journey to really figure out, like, what is this? Why am I not able to do a bachelor's degree? And I finally, it was during one of my when I was studying engineering, I had a humanities class. So talking about human history and civilizations. And this guy had traveled all over the world. And I mentioned to him that I had found a school in Europe that offered what I was really interested in, which was a program called Industrial Design Engineering. And it combined a bit the art side and the engineering side and really brought them together nicely. And he looks at me and he says, if you can leave the United States, leave now.
What?
And this was in 2014. So he was really wise. And so I said, okay. So I went to visit the school, and it still took a few years before I was able, with the housing situation here in the Netherlands, and of course, finding the momentum to leave one country and move to another is a big step. So then I finally ended up moving here in 2016 to study industrial design engineering, and was able to graduate on time, which was a huge personal success, right? After so many years of not really being able to stick with it and accomplish what I thought I wanted to accomplish. And
did you find out why it wasn't working? What was the reason for your struggle?
Yeah. So, well, I mean, it's still in the process. I'm not, but I think I have ADHD, which I'm still in the process of getting diagnosed. But I think my brain is just different somehow. And of course,
I think my brain is different. So yeah, that's interesting. You had a sleeping disorder, but you also had ADHD. Which is
right?
That's so whoa.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of things, and which also comes back to the self-discovery
with ADHD.
Yeah. And so an ADHD can present itself in so many different ways, especially in females.
How is it presenting? When you say you think you have it, but I'm assuming you haven't had any diagnosis saying.
So I'm in the process right now, and it takes quite some time.
Okay. I have no clue how that works, by the way. How you get that label. Please tell me.
That's a whole podcast in itself. But for me, I think it presents in the fact that I'm interested in everything. Like, we can be talking about truly any topic, and there's going to be something there that I want to know more about.
That doesn't sound like a bad thing.
No, but then also sustaining that level of interest is very difficult for me.
Right. Oh, okay. So you mean it's not just like, because I'm interested in many things,
Of
but
course,
you
yes.
actually, but you mean you go like, oh, I really want to know everything about that. You mean you, or you
Yeah.
put the energy you put into stuff is sort of that kind of takes a
Yeah,
lot. Okay.
I really get
Uh,
deeply focused, but then I also lose
mm,
focus quickly. So I constantly have
mm,
like 7 to 10 different projects going on.
mm,
Maybe one of them will get finished. I think you can also see it then in my career, in my study choices. Like I
mm-hmm.
started in journalism and then I did the design and then I was engineering and then I was, a bit all over the place. And so I
Okay.
think, and I think then it's more just getting to know, okay, what is it that makes my brain, because my brain is going to be different than anybody else's brain, even if we share
Mm-hmm.
the same label.
Mm-hmm.
And so then what is it about my brain that really makes it tick and makes it come alive? And then
Mm-hmm.
how can I also sustain this and use it in a productive,
Mm-hmm.
maybe not sustain, but how can I use this to its, full potential, right? Because having that interest in everything is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
I'm really, really good at connecting the dots between things that seem completely unrelated, which is a nice.
Okay, but where does the problem start?
Um,
Where, I mean, assuming that because I feel that you experience it as also as a problem or a burden or something, because you want to like, I think I have something. My brain is different. So to me,
yeah,
it all sounds like, yeah, that sounds great.
nice.
What's
Yeah.
what's
So
what's wrong, Morgan?
yeah, so I think that's a good question. I think for me, I started having a lot of anxiety
Okay,
and I didn't necessarily realize it was anxiety. So with the sleep disorder, I thought everyone was this exhausted
sure,
and I just wasn't able to keep up, which of course put
of
some
course,
anxiety.
yeah.
And now being in a professional environment
Mm-hmm.
where they're saying, no, this is how much time it should take you to prepare a class or to do this. And I'm just not able to find that momentum and that rhythm. And I
Mm-hmm.
think these are the small, you
I
laugh, you can understand.
no, no, it's not about me, but I'm like, I think I should see a doctor. So I'm like, what are you talking about? This is all normal. Like, this is my life. What are you talking? Why you're telling me I'm weird? That's sort of that goes in my no, no. There's something wrong with this. Why? This is my life. It's been like this always. Like why? That's like no, but I hear what you're saying. Anxiety is different though. I don't. That is so where. So yeah,
And
and
so I think, and the two can coexist. And so then I
yeah.
found out that the two, like, especially if you're trying to, if your brain works in one way and you're trying to make your brain
Mm,
work in another way,
mm,
of course that's going to create the scenario for more anxiety to come in rather than just being, hey, no, I
sure.
need more time for this task, or oh no, I do better operating in a different way.
How does anxiety? So now you recognized it as anxiety, but how did that manifest itself? How do you what happens to you when that happens?
When I'm having anxiety,
Yeah.
so for me, so my thoughts are usually generally pretty quick. Like I'm having
Mm,
a lot of different thoughts, but then when the anxiety really steps in,
mm,
it's like my brain just launches into another stratosphere in terms of the speed of the thoughts and then also focus. So
mm. Whoa.
if I have to give, I don't know, if there's something coming up that I'm maybe slightly more nervous about, then my brain will just latch onto that event or that topic.
Mm,
And I can't pull my thoughts away from focusing on that
okay.
topic.
Yeah.
So, but then, yeah.
Yeah. But it's difficult to analyze yourself because it's all you know, right? So you don't know how other people's brain work. You don't know, right?
No,
So it's like
exactly.
so you so
And then people are like, you're an overthinker. And I'm like, no, I'm a normal thinker. You don't
yeah.
touch.
Yeah. Well, but other people also don't know because nobody knows. Nobody knows because they also have maybe, maybe their brains are weird too. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Who knows? Who
Who knows?
knows?
And but they don't know because they can't be in your head.
Exactly.
Which
Exactly.
was, yeah. So, but you started to kind of understand a little bit more about this. And
Mhm.
so you think you have ADHD.
Yeah.
Is that something are you seeing someone to kind of get that label? How is that? I
Yeah.
really don't know how that works. So do you go to someone, to a doctor and say,
Yeah, so you would sign, yeah, exactly. So you'd
Where
sign
do I
up.
sign up for ADHD?
So first in the Netherlands, you have to go to your GP
Yeah.
and you have to explain, okay, these are the reasons why I think I should be I need additional support, or that I think there's something going on. The GP hopefully agrees with you and will write you a letter to get into a specialist.
Yeah.
So then you have to find a specialist. Yeah, exactly. So then you have to find a specialist that accepts your insurance, as well as a specialist who's also accepting new patients.
Right.
Yeah. So then once you find the specialist, then you put yourself on the waiting list. And then you wait and you wait and you wait until they finally
How long did you wait?
I waited October to March. So that's October, November, December, January. 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was quite an intense 6 months, because that you, and at the point that I was at, the anxiety was so extreme that, and then, oh yeah, we can help you, but only in 6 months. Yeah. It really feels like, how am I going to make it through this time, So then you get on a waiting list, and then they will do an assessment. And it depends on how, because a lot of these, of course, I'm in the Netherlands, so the assessments were in Dutch, but then they had to translate them in English. So I'm also questioning the quality of, did they really catch, and were they able to fully understand the situation?
Yeah, sure.
So the last few months I've just been having, and they realized that they weren't able to fully assess me on the scale that I needed because of the language barrier. And they said, well, like, we can put you on a waiting list at a new institution, or we can just offer you normal therapy right now and try to help a bit with the anxiety. And so I decided, okay, right now what I need is just some support for the anxiety. So then I'm still in that process to get a proper, thorough assessment that can be done. Yeah. So it's really a journey as well.
Yeah. It's terrible. No, it's really terrible. If you really need help, especially on a, when you need help on a psychological level, it takes so long.
It's really,
but you, is that something you, what if they say, no, you don't have ADHD?
And I was just thinking about that. Yeah. Like, oh, no, Morgan.
Are you then like, no, I want it. No, sometimes it's nice to know what's wrong with you, right? They'll go like, oh, we know this is what's wrong with you. Here's a pill or something.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't think it will be a pill style situation for me, but also in design, right? Like, we want to identify the proper problem so that we also start designing the solution.
Yeah, exactly. You can go like, okay, problem. Yeah, here it is. This is what's wrong. But so would it be the disappointment, do you think? You go like, if they say no.
So if they tell me that I don't have, I'll probably still be skeptical, because in my heart, like, I feel like there's something different,
Yeah.
But then at some point too, and especially because it's not like, it's not a life or death situation. And a lot of the support that you get when your brain is different is then just, okay, what are the tools that you can use in your life to help make things work for you? It's not,
but you don't have to wait for the label, right? So there's you don't have to go like, first I need to know, and then I start doing something.
So I've been doing a lot of my own research.
Yeah, for sure.
And implementing these tools, and hey, okay, this is what I can do to make it easier for myself. So I've already been doing some of that.
But knowing this, if you look back, when you were a kid, is this, I mean, so that this is something that maybe now makes sense, right? So you go like, oh, this is why I was so difficult to handle. What do we do with Morgan situations? Right. So is that, do you look at sort of, when you were a kid, do you look at that differently now when you look in hindsight? You go like, oh,
I think it definitely helps support the point where I'm at now. And like, oh, okay, why did I want to just spend so much time reading books? Why was I so interested in, in learning all these different things? Why was I so I taught myself how to read when I was 3 years old. Like that's not
How do you
normal
do that?
3-year-old.
No, that's not normal. No, that's kind of, oh, wow, really? How do you do that when you're 3?
So we had these cassette tapes way long, many, many years ago. We had these cassette tapes that would play songs, and then you would have a song book, and there would be the words. So you
Yeah.
could listen to the song and see the words on the page. And
Wow.
when it was time to
Really?
turn the page, there was like a special sound to turn the page. But somehow we had a ton of these books. So I would just sit in my room listening to these songs, reading these books. And the story goes that one day I came out of my room. I was like, Mom, I can read.
And you were, and they
Very
caught you
cute.
with a book with Dickens. They're like, hey, Mom, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Wow, really?
And so
That's
she's like,
amazing.
and I was like, no, Mom, I can read. I can read. And she's like, okay, what's this? And she points to a word and I read it. And she points to another word and I read it. And then she's like, oh my God, she can read.
Wow. Because I mean, that obviously is amazing. But so I don't know how brains work.
Me neither.
No, not many people do. But as far as I know, is that when you're a 3-year-old, your brain also, you don't. So, for instance, kids will kind of, and my son, he just stopped doing it. He's 10. He just stopped doing kind of flipping letters. So, doing them upside down. So, because you don't see things the way, it's really, would be so fascinating to see through the eyes of a 3-year-old because the world looks different. So, recognizing the shapes and translating that shape into meaning is like, that needs to develop. You don't have that brain yet. As far as I know, a 3-year-old
makes
don't
sense.
have it.
That makes sense. And I think, and especially, and because now I can make the connections really fast. We can be talking in a business meeting, and I can instantly be making connections about a movie I saw that weekend and how the business meeting has parallels. But I think for me, that pattern recognition and observation has always been quite strong.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's also what I'm doing. I don't necessarily know the meaning behind the word, but if you point to a word, I can tell you that it says cat.
Yeah.
Or something, just like repeat, so, kind of.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's amazing. So, okay, so wow, it would be nice to look into your head, man. Because like, because like
what is going on in there?
What is going on? Oh my God. Yeah. So, but your parents, so did they, what?
So they,
I don't know what the question should be, but like, what about your parents?
Yeah. So I mean,
like,
I think they just thought I was super smart, which, of course, which I was.
Yeah.
But then we also then, because I have 2 brothers as well. So then also dealing with, and all 3 of us are very different in our own ways. So then trying to manage all 3 of us, then also became a bit of and it was like, no, okay, Morgan's smart. She, there was the question, what do we do with Morgan? But it's not like I was setting papers on fire underneath my desk. I wasn't causing chaos. So I think it was more like, okay, Morgan can be self-sufficient. She she's smart. She'll be okay. But, and then they had to deal with other things. And so I think, especially as females, there's a lot of pressure on to do the right thing, to say the right thing, to act in a certain way. And so that's also a parallel that they're finding then with females that are neurodivergent, who have special brains, that it's almost harder to recognize that in them because they're so conditioned to fit this pattern or to fit this expectation of what is expected from them. And so then breaking out of that and saying, okay, what is really me? And what is just me because I've been programmed to act in this way.
Right. Yeah.
So that's been a fun.
Yeah.
And I think everybody has this, female or not, everybody has this pressure to act, conform.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah. And that's not not conscious. You don't, often you don't know that's happening, right? So I think there's a time in your life where you go like, wait a minute. So to me, I always feel that somewhere in your 30s, like, who am I, and what is my and what is sort of my how was I conditioned, but also I also felt like I recognized all of a sudden that there are things that I would do or say or think that were my kind of my parents or my father. I
I
was like,
open my mouth and my mother comes out, and I'm like, what is this?
exactly. No, right? So you go like,
Yeah,
oh, but that's my mother or that's my father, and it's like,
yeah,
oh, but who am I?
yeah.
I think that's I think it's part of being sort of. I always feel that somewhere in your 30s because that's where you kind of get a better sense of self, or at least you
Mhm.
can also reflect on yourself. You can look at yourself from a
Yes,
distance. You go like, huh. Before that time, you're just whatever. You just go about your business. You don't really
exactly.
think about these things, and then you're in your 30s and you go like, wait a minute. You know, but who am I in all of this? What am
Exactly.
I? What's
Exactly.
the purpose of life? Kind of a thing, right? Because you're like, yeah, it has to do with, yeah, usually you should be on track. Your career should be kind of you made your choices,
Yeah.
you're married if all is well. You have, something, all these standard like these
Title. Yeah.
cliches. Yeah, you should kind of that should be and then usually life doesn't happen that way because it's a mess. And you're
Definitely.
like,
Yeah.
right? And you feel you have to you might be able to make one big decision in life for work, for instance. If you're in your 30s,
Mhm.
you go like, I can't make another. Now I could still choose something. I
Yeah.
could still choose. So I will never be a whatever professional soccer player or something, but I could make a big decision career wise, but that will be my last one. I think there's sort of like
There's
it's almost
definitely this narrowing pressure that,
right.
yeah. Yeah.
Isn't
And
it?
it's funny because so I'm about to be 32, but then on my 31st birthday was when I was in Paris, this beautiful weekend in Paris, and I had a panic attack on the street corner. And you really feel this like narrowing. And so
Yeah.
then your assessment of the 30s, right,
Yeah.
is right on I'm right on time.
Yeah, I did so I've done theater and comedy, and
Mhm.
we did when I was in my 30s. We did a whole play about the 30-ish crisis, sort of
Okay.
it's sort of this moment in life where you go like, huh. So because it's narrowing, because their options are not like, one of the things was I will never play for the national team football team anymore. That's kind of like, that's not going to happen, is it? No. So there's a lot of these things like, I won't be that. I will never be a surgeon. I won't be flying airplanes
Yeah.
professionally. I won't be. So there's a whole list of things that like I couldn't do. But when you grow up with this idea, you have to choose what you want to be. And what are
Mhm.
you going to be? Right? And what are you going to be when you grow up? And then you're growing up. And you're like, I think I'm growing up. Damn it. Your 20s are like on
Yeah. What
like,
am I?
what am I? Did I make it? What I wanted to be something. Am I that now? Is that it? This is it? Or should I like, oh, damn it, I should, oh, and if you're not, you go, and that, well, I think in your case and my case as well, but in your case, you might go like, there's so many options.
Yeah.
Are they still there? So how do you experience that being 30 and you're
Mhm,
and
mhm.
how is that for you?
Yeah. And so, and for me, I'm still, and I think maybe this is also why I'm drawn to the artist title, because artists are constantly reinventing
Mm,
themselves, and an artist today is going to look different. So that same artist is going to be completely different artist
yeah,
in 10 years, in
all as
5 years,
well. Yeah,
if
for
all's
sure.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, it's freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but for me, I'm also still really questioning how I'm operating professionally. And it's, to me, it's less about the title and more about, okay, what are my values and what are the projects that bring me energy and bring me joy? And how can I just kind of follow those and see where they lead? So it's a bit, so there was one point where I was telling people what I was doing, but then there was also this internal disappointment. And that was kind of,
Really? How
yeah.
come? What do you mean?
That I wanted to be something else. So to say what I was actually doing, which wasn't the dream, I wanted to be a designer. I wanted to be making things.
Hmm.
And then when I told them well, okay, and I've come more to peace. So I'm a lecturer at a university, and I've come much more to peace with that. But the first year there was a lot.
The way you, even now, the way you say, I'm a lecturer at university. This is someone in Hollywood who's a waitress and actually wanted to be an artist, a movie star.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a waitress.
Which is so
I'm actually a movie star. I'm an actress, really. Now I'm a waitress now. But I'm working on a movie, and so that sort of your lecture at a university is actually pretty cool. But but I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
And when I look at my own values and the things that I'm interested in, being a lecturer at this department in this university aligned so closely with what I'm like. I value connecting with other people. I value helping people. I value education and learning. I value trying new things and creating a safe space to fail. So being a lecturer aligns perfectly, like really, truly. But then the actual title of itself. So there was a really big like cognitive dissonance there for me. And so I'm embracing it more this year. This is my second year in the role. And so I'm having a lot more fun, which is really good. But it is really interesting how we deal with these labels or these titles. So even coming back to I am an artist, but I'm also going to hesitate to claim that for myself is, we're so interesting.
You're an artist and you also teach. So.
Yeah.
But it's temporarily just
Who knows?
because
maybe I teach for the rest of my life, and I don't know what's going to happen. But
it's interesting. No, but it's really cool that you said that, because I think a lot of people feel that way. So there's a disconnect between sort of who you think you are and what you want to be, sort of what you just call the dream, and what you're actually doing, although it ticks all the boxes in a way, but it doesn't really all ticks all the boxes, because there's something about being sort of that artist and the freedom of it, and so, but I mean, there's no reason why you can't be both. I mean, there's no reason why you can't be both. You are both, really. It's just that when people ask you, what do, you feel you have to kind of say what your job is, and that's the official thing that you're doing. That's your job. Your job is, and then the rest of the thing, the life, whatever you are, doesn't matter. Which is also weird, because to me, you are one thing. One of the things you do is teach, but you do so much more.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So it's like, I teach too. I teach, every Wednesday I teach at a design school. I'm a teacher. I like being a teacher, but I don't see myself as a teacher. That's the first thing I say to the students. Like, I'm not a teacher. Okay. So
just clarify.
Yeah, right. Okay. It's in the small print when you signed up. It's like, he's not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I like teaching, and I like to make impact on people's lives, and which and if I see that, if I give people something of, even can be really small, like a new insight or something new, that's really cool. And teaching is just one way of doing it, but there's so many other ways of doing that. So,
and I just had the realization that maybe it's not the teaching that's the problem. Maybe it's the having to assign myself one label.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if I was doing whatever it is that my dream is, which I'm still figuring out. I don't know what my dream is. But even if I had that dream title, maybe I would still feel limited by, because we're all so much more than just.
Of course, yeah. But that's conditioning. That's society saying, "Oh, you're a teacher," and you're like, yeah. Maybe sometimes. Yeah. I think a lot of people have that issue. It's conditioning, and you feel, because we are conditioned in this idea that you have, you have your work and you have work-life balance. We're like, no. That's a. I mean, I'm not really big on conspiracy theories, but if there's one, that's one where you go like, we pretend that work is different than life, so we can have a crappy job and stay there, because that's work, and then you leave you leave work to go home. You leave your work at your work, and you don't take that home with you, because then you have your life, basically, which is nonsense. It doesn't happen that way. It's all life. It's all life. And there are way too many people unhappy in their job.
Mhm.
But so I think it's something we tell ourselves to be okay with the fact that we hate our job. So I think you're a human being and you have many things and passions, and it's also not like you have to kind of be professionally sort of, you don't have to do something and be paid for it in order to be that, right? Again, if
Mhm.
you're an artist but nobody's buying your work, does that mean you're not an artist? I mean, Van Gogh is an artist. Nobody bought his work, and
That's true.
he was really bad at drawing. Really, he was not a very good artist. But he made use of his sort of his not being skilled by keep on trying until you came up with this unique thing that it really touches people emotionally. All of a sudden, no, no, he will never know because he died
Sadly.
poor.
Yeah.
But there is so, but I mean, so there's no point in saying that you're not an artist or you are an artist or you're not being paid for this, so then you can't claim that as being that person. So if you're, I would say you're an artist, you're a designer, you teach, you do many things, and which is
Yeah.
great. And so, and you're still very young, and I can tell you, when I was 30, 31, 32, I had no clue what I was doing. I was not teaching at a university, I can tell you that. I was I was making a mess of my life.
Ah.
Yeah, which turned out to be great in the end, because it's actually that being sort of that chaotic person and being able to connect things that other people are not
Mhm.
connecting. That's the thing. So
Yes. Yeah.
being sort of I call that the space in between. This is where you can live. This is awesome. There's a great place. And you have to kind of every now and then, join one of those fixed kind of spaces, a
Mhm.
university or or a firm or a corporate or whatever,
Yeah.
but being in that space in between is where, that's the cool place, because
There's
this
a
is
lot
where
of,
yeah, and
yeah.
there are a lot of people there. Sometimes they don't know they're there. But I think that's yeah, from all the interviews I've been doing, and also the people that I know in my network, a lot of people are there, but they feel they have to kind of find a fixed position somewhere, and that becomes a label, and that is
Yeah.
then the thing they are. But that's not who you are. It's just
No,
one of the things.
exactly. And usually, and I think, like, I'm in seeing how life goes, I think that we move from one fixed thing back into this
Yeah.
transition space. And you were
Yes.
kind of talking about that earlier, like you're at this, just
Mm.
a transition space, and
Yes.
how do you also get comfortable with stepping into that transition space, saying, yeah, okay, I was this, and now I'm going to
Yeah.
see whatever
Yeah.
comes my way. And
Yeah. I love that space.
yeah, it's
That's
terrifying,
not a transition.
also
It's not a
beautiful.
transition. Yeah, but it's not a transition space. I think that's actually not what it is. It's the space.
The space.
That is the place. It's just that you think you're transitioning from one space to another. No, it's that space in between is the
Mm.
space to live. That's what it is. That's where I found many years ago, 17 years ago, I found design thinking to be there. It's not
Okay.
there anymore. Now it's a fixed space. So I
Mm.
struggle with it now, because now, like, this is not my space anymore, because it
Mm.
used to be this space in between where you are not an expertise, you're not a fixed bubble, you are floating, and you can tap into many things, like, hey, here's qualitative research, what's that all about? And people would say, you're not a researcher. I say, no, I'm really curious about this. And then I move on and went to designers. You're not a designer. You're not a graphic designer. I go, no, I'm not. I'm really curious about this thing. You're not a
Mm.
business consultant. No, I'm not. I'm really curious about this thing. You don't know nothing about whatever lean or agile. That is true,
Mhm.
but I'm really curious about this thing, and
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. You're not a engineer. No, I know, but I'm really curious about this. So basically, what you described when you about you, especially
Mhm.
even when you were a kid, going like, I'm really curious about all these things. But now too, I think that is awesome, except that you have to manage your own energy. But I
Yes.
think it has something to do with, and again, I'm not a psychologist, but it has something to do with um, and knowing that that is the place. You don't,
Mm.
accepting, because you just a couple of minutes ago you said it's the anxiety comes because you want to kind of change the way you think, because you
Mm.
feel you have to think differently. You have
Yeah.
to kind of be able to focus on something, and I say, from my, and I'm not like you, because I'm not that smart, but seriously,
Clever, Arnold. You're very
I first of all, I have dyslexia. Still can't read. So there. So
reading has nothing to do with intelligence.
I know. But no, but my point is that it is actually accepting that is what it is,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
knowing that there is a place out the side, where that is accepted. Actually, it's treasured. It is needed. There's a hunger for people like you who do not think the way other people think, or who are conditioned in such a way that they can't do this anymore. You are someone who could not be conditioned to think that way, and
Yeah.
that is painful. And maybe you get a label, of you, or you have
Yeah, sure.
ADHD or something, but it doesn't change anything. It just means that it's about acceptance. So I think that maybe helps you with accepting the fact that you are that way. Like
That's
my dyslexia helped to say, oh, I have dyslexia, so my brain works differently.
yeah.
Right. So that's helpful. And then, but it's more like it helps you be more secure with who you are, but it
Mhm.
doesn't change who you are. So,
No, not
so
at
I,
all.
so that's my, there you go.
Yeah.
See, there is so.
Well, that is wisdom. That is wisdom right there. And I think the that peace and that acceptance is really powerful. And so the more that we can step into that, whether it's saying like, no, I am an artist, or
Yes.
yeah,
Well,
okay, I
just step into it. Just go and step into it. I mean, it's an awesome site, and it's scary because
Mhm.
I mean, if that scares you, if that makes you feel vulnerable, it's the right place.
Yes,
Then
yes, yes.
actually, in your heart, you feel
In
it,
your
like
heart,
that's
there's
where I
something.
want to be. Yeah. So
Exactly.
that's where you are. It's just that, you have to acknowledge it to yourself and be brave. And I think, and don't we haven't talked about that explicitly, and because it is sort of a creative leadership
Mhm.
podcast, but that is what I believe is creative leadership to yourself,
Mm,
to yourself, but also for others, because I think your creative leadership means that you're stretching sort of the boundaries of what you think is possible. You're stepping into things that you think is not possible, or is not allowed, or you're not. So you kind of creating more options for yourself
yeah,
and for others.
yeah,
You go like,
yeah.
and that is what I think is leadership and creative leadership, meaning that you go step into it. Have
Mhm.
guts, have have the courage to do so, and what can possibly go wrong?
And I found that because you mentioned that to the students you tell them, hey, listen, I'm not a teacher,
Yeah,
which is also a level of vulnerability. Like you're being
yeah,
honest and transparent about that with them. And I think that every time I've taken that step of vulnerability and courage, it's always been a bit nerve-wracking, right? And how are
yeah,
they going to receive it? But I've never had it's always led to a positive outcome, whether it's me feeling more secure and grateful that I was vulnerable, or whether it also creates that space for somebody else to be more vulnerable. And people
exactly.
continually, and I mean, even just having this conversation with you, I didn't know where this conversation was going to go, but it's been such a beautiful surprise and delight. And then also then by giving people the space to be themselves, that really brings them a lot of richness that I maybe wouldn't have even seen for myself, that by opening
Yeah,
that up, yeah, allows that to exist.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that's, yeah, and I think that is what I hesitate with creative, but leadership in general should
Mhm.
kind of
Sure.
uh,
Yeah.
make happen. They should create that safe space, and so vulnerability is necessary. Being authentic, obviously, it's a bit of a
Mhm.
cliche, but still. Um, but being vulnerable, truly showing how that you're, and I know if I tell my students, like, I'm not a teacher, I want them, because I'm going to share stories from my experience where
Mhm.
I went wrong, because I want to show that I don't want to be some kind of professor that they look up to. I just want to be someone who is just like everyone else, but just went through some more experience on a specific topic, and not even, I mean, they also have experiences themselves. All these students, they made mistakes. They they went through life. They know stuff. So
Yeah.
I want to be equal to them, and I want to be able to share, my question marks and my doubts and my insecurities with them, because that is what they should learn, not so much how to do whatever journey mapping or I don't know, really.
Sure.
It's interesting for sure. It's a nice tool, but the attitude that belongs to being a creative person, a human being, and being able to connect the dots, basically,
Yeah.
needs vulnerability and experimentation and listening and empathy and the whole thing. And so it's attitude. So I teach attitude and mindset. I don't, and by teaching people tools and stuff and process but that's really not the point of what I teach. So I think that is also for me the most interesting space to be in as a human being.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's not just because I think it's great to teach them stuff like that, but it's also for me. I like being vulnerable. I like stepping into that. And sometimes people, I work for big corporates.
Sure.
Where it's not, for students, I can go all the way, like, because they have no agenda. But if I work for big corporates, they are not used to that.
No.
And that's even more fun, because then they'll go like, what is he doing? Like, did he really say that? Because the first thing I say, because I'm a school dropout, it's usually the first thing I say. By the way, I never finished any school. Hello. And they are like, Harvard,
Yeah.
PhDs, because it's secure, suit and ties, and like, and we're gonna get a course in this new thing, and here's this guy, and he didn't finish any school. What's going on?
I really love that, because it instantly, it just creates it's this unexpected component that these Harvard suits and ties aren't necessarily expecting, but then it's also genuine. They've all experienced something in their life.
Of course.
It's been difficult.
No, they're not perfect.
No.
They're not, but allow them to not be perfect. So it's your attitude and your behavior that kind of, and not everyone will accept that because they're too insecure, but it's about that's their own insecurity and their own kind of programming and the way they are kind of wired. And so that's a bit of a challenge, but
definitely.
But I think that is, as a person, it's a really good place to be. So stepping into that, and I think you're there. So
thank you. And it's and I think then what challenging them to not challenge, maybe inviting them is a nicer word, inviting them to also meet you on that space. Like, I'm going to be vulnerable. Maybe somebody else can also join me on this level. And I think that also comes back to the conditioning. Sometimes I notice that I shift my behavior or how I'm approaching things to meet where other people are at. But I know that for myself, that being vulnerable and bringing my whole self to the table is always more rewarding, even though it's harder many times. And so that's kind of been the thing that I've been thinking about the last few months. Like, how can I continue to hang out at this level, even if I'm by myself? And continue to invite people to join me. Yeah.
Okay, so if you think, I mean, I know you're still figuring out your dream and what it's going, but what's next for you? What do you think?
Yeah. So one of the topics that I've been diving into lately is endings. And kind of, how you can design products for endings and like the offboarding experience, but then also the concept of moving out of one phase. And so some girlfriends of mine, they just moved to a new apartment. They said, there's a lot of talk about what to do before you move into your new apartment, but we didn't know how to close this last chapter well.
Right.
So then we were thinking about this concept of endings and
That's
also and so
also because we just had this funeral of of the Queen.
Of the Queen, yes, of course.
Which was, if you talk about endings, my God,
Spectacular pageantry, spectacular.
I want one of those.
My gosh, really.
If I go, I'll put that in my will. If I go, I want like that. Can I have like that, please? Yeah. No, but
also this topic of end of life actually also is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart as well. And thinking about, okay, we can live well, but we also don't talk about dying well. And so I think that there's really some magic for me in this concept of endings.
Yeah.
And then I'm diving into this right now with a guy who he has a course called Engineering. So I'm diving into this, then also thinking about it on a more like philosophical level. And also, how can we end? So, okay, for example, somebody's working at a corporate and they're not really happy, but how do they end that phase of their life well to then step into that space, that unknown, and how do we prepare them for that? Because normally somebody leaves a job, we say, oh, what's next?
Where
are you? What's the next job? And
that's really interesting, because I think also we are not, especially, I think, I'm pretty sure there's differences in different cultures, but in especially cultures we are here in the West, and is that we don't really think about endings, right? So it's
no,
just, you
very
think about,
hidden, out of sight. Yeah,
right. You think about the start of things. Very practical level. You buy something, you don't think about. It's not in the design per se of because you just bought the thing, you want to enjoy it. You're like, what do you do when it's broken?
Exactly.
I just bought it. But it's so, yeah, that's really cool, because that's that I think that makes it even more. Could it make it more valuable? If there's a start and you kind of know how the ending is going to be.
Yes. Yeah.
It can be it's really, really interesting. So okay, that's what you're
so I'm exploring this, of course, teaching, which I'm diving more into. I'm also doing some research. I'm also doing a lot of side projects. So collaborating with you guys, I was working with the studio in Antwerp about the difference between art and design.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So a lot of projects. I'm also I realize I really love moving my body. So I've been doing more like active sports. So I went bouldering. I've been surfing more. So
bouldering, remind. Oh yeah, that's climbing without a rope.
Without a rope,
yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So that's a good exercise in fear. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was like, okay, why not have a rope? What's the problem with the rope? So, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more exciting. All right, good.
Yeah. So I'm I feel really at peace in the Netherlands, and that this will be my home, and then just exploring what comes up for me, and I think, I don't know what's next, but I'm excited for whatever it is. Yeah.
Cool. Oh, well, me too. So so talking about endings, how do you end a podcast?
This is my first podcast, so I was hoping you would have some insight on me.
Yeah. No. Well, you say goodbye and you say thank you very much. That was really, really nice talking to you on the podcast, and we will be following you and seeing where this is going to lead. Because
please. Yes, lovely. Thank you so much for having me, and also really great conversation, and really enjoyable.